Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox and thanks for logging on. As ever, all you see here is for sale. In the description, the names, the references, and the prices where available. Reach out to me directly, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Sales, trades, purchases, reach out to me directly, tmosso. And guys, I fixed the squeak in the background. Your prayers have been answered. Let's jump straight into a brand that I think is absolutely awesome. JLC, my old flame, I still love you. And this watch, launched back in 2005, is the most indestructible non-RM timepiece you can buy. Recently, a customer asked me, what can I wear for firearms, marksmanship, biking, golf, active lifestyle, water? And I thought, that is going to be a short list, but this watch makes the list. This is the Master Compressor Extreme World Alarm, and it is both of what the name implies. It is a world time and an alarm. It is also extreme. Yes, it'll wake you up. It features an on and an off for its alarm function, its Memovox capability, and then it has a global reference ring, and you put your current reference time down at 6 o'clock, so I'm in Philadelphia. I will set my local time as New York. You have the 24 principal time zones represented by 24 reference cities. You can see the time in every one of those zones. It has a two-part case. It is made of both steel and titanium. The inner case, and you can see the two different metals in juxtaposition. The inner case is titanium, the outer case is steel. 100-meter water resistance thanks to the 1/2 turn locking compressor crowns. It has springs inside to physically separate the outer steel case from the titanium inner case. And when this watch was launched, there were all sorts of theatrics, including tennis serves, golf drives, and reportedly a carnival-style bell strength game. The watch is big, but it's purposefully big. It gives you everything you want in 46.4 millimeters of steel and titanium, and if you didn't see it on my 16-centimeter circumference wrist, you might not think it would fit on a smaller wrist, but I owned this exact model in the Tides of Time edition for 4 years, and I adored it. A tough watch, and absolutely invulnerable. It even includes a clever quick-release strap system that allows you to use any off-the-shelf or aftermarket 22mm strap. So you see how that works? You just slide it right in. You don't need a proprietary strap to use this quick release. It comes with a matching deploying clasp, double deployant, and as you can see, beautifully made by a high-end manufacturer. This is high luxury. For about $10,000, it gives you RM-style refinements without the RM price. Let's say you're looking for a watch for gifting, a graduate, for instance. I can't think of anything better than this SIHH 2015 variant Master Control from JLC. 39 millimeters in stainless steel. It is a thin and fine high horology watch from a redoubtable manufacturer, and it's important to note that there are options that are relatively low in price, and some of them are going to be Breitling and Omega, maybe an older 36 millimeter Explorer, but the bottom line is if you want to get something that is truly top shelf, but at a reasonable price with durability that frankly is necessary for unfamiliar luxury watch owners and first-timers, this is a great way to do it, as the watch is flat, flush, perfectly sized, easily readable, and the Master Control is adjusted to -1 + 6 seconds a day or better as part of the Master 1000 hours control process. It's also a bit more premium than the sector dial version of the same watch, as that features a printed dial. This one has applique. That one is not loomed, this one is, and that one features a pin buckle. This one features a full deployant. Inside, you can see the auto-tractorized caliber 899-1. Let's get a little bit closer here. As you can see, it is free sprung with ceramic rotor bearings and unidirectional winding. No expense spared. JLC using a 22 karat, not 21, not 18 karat rotor. Automatic winding, 38-hour reserve, hacking seconds, quick sedate, and true fired blue screws. Not the chemically dyed kind. It's a good looking watch front and back, and a great way to get into the luxury watch hobby for your proud new graduate. I promised you a sub, and I'm delivering a Smurf. Our thumbnail watch. This is a timepiece that I happen to adore. The first of the ceramic bezel subs. It launched at Baselworld 2008, and it was a first on many fronts. The first super case Submariner, the first ceramic bezel Submariner, the first blue dial, blue bezel, non-colored gold Submariner. And of course, The Serichrome blue insert, the same color as the lacquered blue dial, creating the impression of a larger watch. And the first series production white gold Submariner on top of everything else. So many famous firsts and a very substantial watch with solid end links, milled clasp, solid center links. It has the feeling of a platinum watch from any other brand. It's nice and thin at about 12.7, 48-hour power reserve, 300 meters water resistant COSC chronometer. This is one of those watches that is all about refinement, and you could hear it and feel it in the bezel. Let's have a listen. The gold standard for combining chunky mechanical detent with glide-like refinement. Somehow it manages to be both highly mechanical and buttery at the same time. Scratch-resistant bezel, a remarkable glide-lock extensible clasp you could see internally. There is 20 millimeters of slidable adjustment built in, and it moves in 2 millimeter increments. So if you want, you can pull it all the way out like a dive extension. If you prefer, you can use it to adjust for fit, as your wrist size may expand or contract with activity or inactivity, hot or cold weather. Possibly my favorite sub of all time and one of my top 3 favorite Rolex models. This might be Rolex's most impressive dial ever, the platinum-dialed Yacht-Master. Now, of course, the bezel is solid platinum, both the insert and the bezel. They're basically one piece, and you can see a combination of polishing and media blasting with a dial that is an exquisite granular, pebbly platinum. The dial is platinum, the hands and the indices are white gold, and the case has grace. As you can see, anything but the later squared off supercase profile. It's tapered, it's handsome, it's fluid, it's shapely, and the watch has an impressive wrist stance because uniquely for this combination of case and bracelet, you have a broad lug-to-lug span that imparts the look of a much larger timepiece than its 40 millimeter measured size. It's also only about 12.3 millimeters thick, so it sits very low, very comfortable on the cuff. This is one of the best Rolex top to bottom design efforts of all time, and in my opinion, with this model, the Yacht-Master truly came into its own in the late 90s after its introduction in 1992. This might be the definitive Yacht-Master model. Of course, I want to be clear, since we are talking about a D serial number, we're also talking about a few more vintagey elements. Now, as you can see, it features solid center links and a solid end link, but it also has a somewhat more rustic and vintage-like Rolex stamped oyster clasp. In every other regard, it is a modern Rolex watch, 100 meters water resistant and COSC chronometer certified. And let's not forget, it is the Yachtsman's Rolex, which means it has a bi-directional timing bezel, allowing you to quickly cut to the chase and align the index with the minute hand for a rapid countdown, or in this case, count up to the start of your regatta. I was there at Basel World 2016 when this version of the Air-King arrived, the rebirth of the briefly discontinued model and a long-running staple of the Rolex sports watch catalog, the 116-900. Well, frankly, it was surprising. The 39.5 millimeter measured 904L stainless steel case is fairly orthodox and should strike no one as unusual, since it is both mechanically and dimensionally identical to the Milgauss. So inside, it's basically an anti-magnetic Milgauss caliber with the same soft iron cage, but it's the dial of this watch that got everyone at the time. With Explorer Tri-Arabics, it was the color and the calibrations that really caught the eye. And if you're wondering where on earth Rolex sourced this aesthetic, well, you can sort of see that it's instrument-like, but the colors, the font, there must have been something behind it, and indeed there was. Keep me streaming. Open up Google, type in Bloodhound SSC. There was a supersonic car effort for which Rolex designed the gauges. And if you look at the gauges in the Bloodhound supersonic car, they look exactly like this watch. Now, 100 meters water resistant, highly anti-magnetic, and of course, a COSC chronometer with a 48-hour automatic winding power reserve. It's a different kind of Rolex watch, as it's sporty, but without the blackened bezel or a rotating bezel. It could also work as your dress watch. Does it have a little more of a joie de vivre than perhaps the sober two-tone steel and black models? Absolutely. Perhaps reminding us that Rolex is, after all, French-Swiss and not German-Swiss, though you could often be mistaken for guessing otherwise. This is a timepiece that feels much more Geneva than Biel. Rolex has bases in both. Okay, Lange, you're crazy, and I love you for it. Now this is a timepiece made in 100 pieces platinum, originally part of a model line launched in 2011, 41.9 millimeters. This is the Richard Lange Tourbillon pour le Merite with a Seifert scale, the Johann Seifert triple overlapping scales. It's not a Venn diagram. The dial is ruthenium coated and made of sterling silver, but it is the tourbillon that will catch your eye here. Now the tourbillon, of course, beautifully rendered with a black polished filigree style wire-like cage, but it's the hacking seconds function that sets this tourbillon apart. Now blink and you'll miss it, but there is also a little bit of a hideaway dial, a trap door so that you can read accurately, it is a German watch after all, and then see easily. And also note the attention to detail as the wheels that actually drive the underlying mechanisms feature a little bit of a spiral inspired by vintage clocks and pocket watches. That is not a conventional wheel spoke. Now, of course, beaten away at 21/6 manual wind with the tourbillon and the fusee and chain. It's not just a hacking second. It's not just a tourbillon. It's not just that the underside of the tourbillon carriage is capped by a real brilliant cut diamond. It is the fusee and the chain, and with 636 parts, the 1/4 of a millimeter thick chain is the single most labor-intensive component in the watch. It's 20 centimeters long and has the strength to suspend 2 kilograms. Now, as you could see, the chain winds from the barrel to the fusee, and then as the barrel discharges, the chain is drawn to the barrel, and it runs up a sort of spiral staircase ramp on the fusee, increasing the mechanical advantage to maintain constant amplitude via constant force. This is an old, late Renaissance pocket watch constant force device, and you could see that there is a planetary differential inside the fusee that allows you to wind it without losing force to the escapement in the process. Absolutely spectacular. Throw the watch on the wrist, it's comfortable, but it's substantial. You can feel all the platinum of this 100-piece limited edition. If you're looking for an haute de gamme complication with no compromise in engineering, aesthetics, or finish, this is the way to go. It even includes an unusual Lange accessory, a full matching platinum deployant clasp. Most Lange watches, even robust complications, include only a pin buckle. Patek launched perhaps the most disruptive watch of 2015. Not so much because the watch was radical, it was a thoughtful reimagining of the pilot watch, but because folks generally considered Patek Philippe to be outside the bounds of aviation watch manufacturers, effectively telling Terry Stern, don't make a pilot's watch. Well, Terry Stern said, no thanks, I will. And the Calatrava Pilot 5524G was born loosely, and I mean very loosely, based on the design of watches from the Patek Philippe Museum. It was more of a no-compromise statement of what the pilot watch could be in terms of fine finish and detailing. 42 millimeters in white gold, the watch has a dial, much like the Aquanaut travel time, but richer. As you can see, we'll get super close. It has a pebbly blue granular surface in a matte navy finish. You have the lovely cathedral-style blued hands, and then applique white gold Arabic numerals. The crown's on the side of this watch, by the way, 60 meters water-resistant rather than the standard Calatrava 30. You can swim with it on the surface. When you turn and unlock these quarter-turn keys, you're able to adjust the travel time complication. Now you can see it's locked. I unlock it, and all of a sudden I can move the local hour hand in either direction. Also note, I'm able to cover that second time zone when I don't want it. Take further note, I can see that there's an AM/PM indicator or a day-night indicator for both home and away time zones. So you can see as I turn the watch, both of those transform, switching between day and night. The watch also includes a radial date down at 6 o'clock, and I love playing with these little switches. I love the fact that they're lockable so they won't be accidentally actuated, and I adore the fact that Patek sweated the details with its pilot's watch, not just the dial, which is the highlight, but also in the use of a cross-stitched, contrasting stitched brown calfskin strap and a counterweighted Klebs-style buckle that looks much like a fixture on vintage aviation flight suit attire. Roll it all over, it's beautifully made. It's a caliber 324, identical mechanically to what you find in the Aquanaut travel time, which means it's beautiful, and with anti-magnetic silicone hairspring, Gyromax free-sprung balance, and the Patek Philippe seal, certified to run no worse than -3 + 2 seconds a day from the factory. 35 to 45 hour automatic winding power reserve, and you can see the Patek brooks no compromises when finishing even its basic automatic caliber. Now, let's say you want to up the ante in the high-stakes world of ultra-luxury sports watches. FP Journe had your number in 2018, and this remains my favorite version of the Linesport Monopussoir Rattrapante, a timepiece, 44 millimeters in platinum with a blue mauve dial. It features applique white gold numerals, a ceramic insert bezel, ultra-thin 12.2 millimeter profile, a lovely hammered profile to both case and bracelet, so you can see this watch is handmade inside and out. And yes, it includes a split-second system. What appears to be a conventional chronograph is actually a split-second mono-pusher system that allows you to split the seconds and gauge a waxing or waning gap between two racers around a track, perhaps two cars around a course, your choice. It also includes a double-digit date, bringing the date back to the FP Journe chronograph for the first time since the early to mid-2000s Octa flyback chronograph. Now, the timepiece is beautifully made inside and out, and as you can see, you are getting a lot of platinum. FP Journe uses rubber bumpers to prevent the high-impact surfaces on the case and the bracelet from scratching. I'm going to get super close here and show you the movement. Now, the movement, as you can see, is a split second made of 18 karat rose gold. There we go. We got a really good view of it there. 80-hour manual wind power reserve, beats weight 21.6, and you can see Journe uses an oscillating pinion right there rather than a conventional lateral clutch. The oscillating pinion taking us back to the old Cartier Tortue Monopoussoir that FP Journe designed, at least internally. With this tiny oscillating pinion rather than a conventional lateral clutch, there's almost no jump or stagger to the mechanism when it starts up, just like a vertical clutch, but with the beauty and visibility of a lateral clutch. The movement, as you can see, is also properly sized at approximately 34 millimeters across, and you can see that it is handsomely executed with steel levers, steel recentering hammers, steel oscillating pinion bridge, all of that over a rose gold base. It is very heavy as a result of the combination of the rose gold and the platinum. But if you're looking for something a little bit more durable in the world of FP Journe sports watches, the 2016 to present Elegante 48 is it. 48 millimeters lug to lug by 7.7 millimeters thick and about 39.5 millimeters 9:3. This featherweight titanium screw down crown and fully swimmable FP Journe sports watch, and I have that from FP Journe and Montre Journe themselves. This is the most swimmable Journe. If that's important to you, you got to be thinking about this watch. The timepiece features a fully loomed dial, so the whole dial is a block of luminova, and you actually see the indications and numerals and the hands lit in relief. There is a small oscillating mass on the dial side, and that's there to let the watch know that you are wearing it, and as it moves, it wakes up the watch. It will go to sleep after 30 minutes. It will save its battery. In standby mode, it will remember the time courtesy of the microprocessor, and it will be able to last up to 18 years in standby mode. Now, this is a high horology quartz movement designed to last the life of the watch. It has that 8 to 10 year on the wrist power reserve, 18 years on standby, and when the watch wakes itself up, the hands will actually drive forward or backwards via stepper motors, whichever is shorter, forward or backwards, in order to assume the correct current time. Throw it on the wrist, it's very easy to wear. Flat, flush, and as you can see, curved on its case back, it sits easily, handsome, and below any cuff. You don't have to wear a Timex Ironman or a G-Shock. If you don't want to wear the high horology piece as your daily driver, go with this. That's what it's designed for. Now, I don't think I gave you a wrist shot of the 44 millimeter Monopoussoir, so here it is, very flat, 12.2 millimeters, and though it's broad and large, it's easy to wear on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference, no problem there. Let's do some loom shots. Okay. Here's the Patek Philippe 5524 Calatrava Pilot. Here is the FP Journe Elegante 48. That was me banging my head. And here is the Rolex Submariner Smurf. All right, back in action. Let's talk about one that doesn't glow. Launched in 1998, the Patek Philippe Aquanaut 5065A was not the first Aquanaut, though it was only 1 year removed, but it was the one you'll want to wear. Well, the 5060A was tiny at 35.6 millimeters, but the 5065 at 38 became the original Aquanaut Jumbo. This is one of the earliest examples with original tritium dial and hands, so it is a vintage collectible on top of still being a 120-meter water-resistant steel sports watch. Throw this one on the wrist again because it is a full tritium dial, and that is real patina, not photina. It doesn't glow, but it works in every other regard as a rubber strap full steel sports watch. Handsome, comfortable, flat at only 8.3 millimeters thick. It's a wonderful collector's piece that you can still wear every day. And if you're burned out on the Nautilus, this might be the way to go, as they're not making any more of them, and it is a very special, historically important piece as the first full-size men's Aquanaut. Now, another difference between this and the 5060 is that this one features a display caseback over its caliber 315, which, as ever, with the Patek movement, is nicely made. This being an older example, it bears the Poisson de Genève, the Geneva hallmark, on the bridge carrying the terminal end of the drivetrain. You can see it's free sprung, still with the Gyromax, 35 to 45 hour power reserve. The difference between a 324 and a 315 is that this beats at 21.6 rather than 28.8, and this is bidirectional winding rather than the later unidirectional wind. The dial here with its geosphere cut is immaculate, and you can really see that tritium fade. This watch has no tritium fade, but the champagne dial, I'm told, is the most step-intensive, that is process-intensive, of the standard Grand Seiko dials. And this is a model based on an original GMT launched in 2016. This is the post-2017 Grand Seiko dial, Grand Seiko Elegance High Beat GMT SBGJ217. 39.5 millimeters in the Elegance case, inspired by the original 1960 Grand Seiko. The timepiece features the champagne dial with a fired blue steel 24-hour hand for the second time zone, and some of the most beautifully faceted and black polished Dauphine hands you will ever encounter. Grand Seiko dial furniture is world-class, and as you can see with this GMT, I have both my local 12-hour time zone, my bidirectional date, and my 24-hour second time zone. Hacking or stop seconds, you better believe it. Inside the case, caliber 9S86, 36,000 vibrations per hour, 10 beats per second, like in El Primero. And if I wind it up, you'll be able to see that super smooth sweep to the second's hand, just like on a Zenith El Primero, but it has 5 hours more power reserve than an El Primero at 55. It's also adjusted in 6 positions versus the Swiss and chronometer standard of 5. Now, because this is a vintage-inspired piece, you can see that the logo on the buckle is the vintage Grand Seiko logo, and the original owner of this watch had absolutely zero fun, so you will be the first to open that clasp. Sometimes guys get into a watch and they lose their nerve before they put it on. Whatever, you're the beneficiary. The movement is all Grand Seiko, not just the bridges, the plates, but the small parts, hairspring, balance, escapement, and the really small parts, like the shock protection, the pivot jewels, even the lubricants, all made in-house by one of the most integrated manufacturers in the world. The case with the famous Zaratsu black polish. This is the kind of finish you see on the screws of a Patek Philippe or the swan's neck regulator of an haute de gamme independent. But that same type of black polish executed over the enormity of the case here, held against a spinning tin plate by eye, hand, finger pressure, and artisanal knowledge. This black polish, this mirrored surface, is created, again, holding the surface directly against the spinning tin plate with no margin for error, creating millimetrically identical bevels from side to side on the lugs. This is as good as it gets. A hand-finished watch, a high horology movement, a hand-finished dial, all of this designed to last the life of the owner from a brand that only makes a handful of watches each year compared to the big three of Rolex, Breitling, and Omega. This is the SBGJ High Beat GMT. 217. I mentioned Vacheron, so we must speak of Vacheron, and there's nothing more distinctly Vacheron Constantin than an ultra-thin dress watch. Here in rose gold, you're looking at the 82172. This is the Traditionnel manual wind. As you can see, 38 millimeters by 7.8 millimeters thick. That is 7.8 millimeters thick. The watch features a lovely silver dial featuring a somewhat darker silver center and an opaline matte finish with a lighter silver outboard for the minutes track. Note the use of faceted diamond-polished applique indices in rose gold, a sunken sub-register with metallic concentric Rayhot and inner chapter ring, and then you have half-frosted Dauphine hands. That's how you know you're looking at the Traditionnel and not the Patrimony. The big T has Dauphine hands, whereas the Patrimony has baton or stick-style hands. Now, the watch includes a remarkably strong case with typically forceful Vacheron lugs. As you can see, they have a little bit of a downward tuck, but they also have a sort of fluting on their underside that makes them read as thinner on the wrist, but also gives them some visual strength and profile. That fluted profile continues through the mid case, and then the case back is gorgeous. This is Vacheron's manufacturer caliber 4401, manual wind 65-hour power reserve, Geneva hallmark, and you can see this is post-2012 Geneva hallmark, as the ponceau is on both the bridges as well as the case itself, a full watch standard. There's a nice interior angle at the center of the movement over the center wheel. The Côte de Genève deeply ridged, and you can see the mirrored anglage on the edge of the bridges, but also in all of the jewel and screw sinks. There's engine turning on the base plate, satination as well as beveling on the wheels themselves. You can see that the regulator cap itself is black polished, and then there is a balance beaten away at 28,800 vibrations per hour, 5-position adjustment like a chronometer. Kari Voutilainen has inspected this movement and commented favorably upon it for being thin, beautiful, not just in its finish, but in its traditional center wheel layout. This is a handsome high horology movement, and with 65 hours of reserve, it has long legs. You can also see how broad and beautiful the bevels are, as the anglage is lighting up with that optically smooth, rounded mirror finish, indicative of true hand finishing, not a machined bevel. Let's throw it on the wrist, because it's a special watch, both in the way it wears and the way it presents. The way it wears is thin, flat, flush, sitting underneath any kind of a cuff whatsoever. It's appropriate for wrists as small as 13 centimeters in circumference, and thus a very obvious choice if you're looking for a unisex option. This is a handsome timepiece that is quintessential Vacheron. Jumping back real quick to the other side of Geneva, we have the FP Journe Centigraphe Sport. Now, this is the model made from 2014 on, 42 millimeters. You can see it is DLC blackened titanium. It's somewhere between gray and black. It features the 42 millimeter compound lug profile that is associated with the sport line. Now, this being a Centigraphe, it winds with the crown in the first position, outboard of flush. And you can see perhaps the most striking feature of the Centigraphe Sport is that the tachometers of the standard watch are removed from the dial. As a result, you wind up with the ability to see the underlying mechanism, specifically the underlying mechanism of the Tourbillon, which is a 360,000 vibration per hour secondary escapement. You can see it chattering away, allowing you to resolve 1/100th of a second. There are smoked sapphires for all three of the registers: 1 second, 20 seconds, and 10 minutes. This is also a loomed watch, so you guessed it, a loom shot is coming, with all the distinctive Journe hands, including loomed versions of his traditional biomorphic center hands, a bezel for the sub-registers of the dial, and polished dial side bolts. Inside the case, FP Journe does things a bit differently with the line Sport. As you can see, caliber 1506 is now rendered in aluminum, bridges and plates, rather than the conventional rose gold. The aluminum and the titanium making for a very light watch on the wrist. It beats away at 21.6, and with the chronograph on, it has a 24-hour power reserve. With the chronograph off, it has an 80-hour power reserve. Now, you can also see one of the most distinctive features of this movement, the architecture. The barrel is centralized because of the two patents on this watch. One is the rocker system. It's a mono pusher watch that nevertheless can start and stop without resetting. So that mono pusher, like rocker, also gives you the ability to operate it, start, stop, and restart like a conventional dual pusher chronograph. So that rocker is part of the patent. Now, another patented feature is that central barrel. So you have the patented rocker and a patented system for driving the chronograph and the time. You can see the toothed edge of the barrel, that drives the time. Now, you can't see the arbor, at least the top of the arbor, which is like the axle of the the actual barrel, and it's off the arbor that the chronograph drives, which allows you to activate the chronograph without losing any amplitude. And that is a feature that is exclusive to the Centigraphe and the JLC Duomet, two chronographs that lose no amplitude when the chronograph is activated. Throw it on the wrist, very comfortable. Flat, flush, bigger than the standard Centigraphe, but not substantially larger. You can see that the lug profile, though broader across the wrist, is still nicely confined and short cropped as the strap itself flares out to the edge of the wrist. Comfortable, very light in titanium with an aluminum movement. This is a special piece, and we're going to do a lume shot. I promised you lume, and here it is. Now, if the standard Centigraphe is cool, but you need a watch that can function as a full-service Sportster, or you just like the feel of a sports watch and the lume of a dial, this is going to be the one you want to pick. I particularly like the fact that both the numerals and outboard indices are lumed. Okay, value for money. No company gives you more in a dress watch than Blancpain. Pre-owned, these watches are screaming deals, and back in 2006, this Le Brassus Perpetual Calendar GMT represented outstanding refinement, a timepiece 42mm in platinum. It features the 2005 innovation for Blancpain, which is the underlug corrector system, so not only can you not accidentally damage the Perpetual Calendar by setting it at the wrong time, but there are no dimples or perforations on the case itself, and you don't need any tools to actuate these underlug correctors. You simply press them, and the indications of the Perpetual Calendar jump forward. Now, it's also a GMT, as you have a 24-hour ring inboard of the hour track, and you have the ability to set your local hours independently, like so. A Perpetual Calendar with a Havana dial. This Havana metallic dial was touting the advantages of a lovely metallic tobacco brown a full 10 years before FP Journe got into the business. You could see the white gold applique, white gold hands, and the explosive sunburst metallic brown base in juxtaposition, the polish and the sunburst grain. A beautiful medley of color, character, and explosive light dispersion. Now, the watch is part of a 150-piece limited edition. Note the use of a full platinum clasp, and the timepiece is only about 13mm thick, so it is nice and slim on the wrist. Caliber 55A5, 100-hour automatic winding power reserve, 5-position chronometer-style adjustment, and if you look closely, you can see that it includes a freehand engraved white gold winding mass. This is not rose lathe work. This is all done by hand with a small hammer and a burin, and no two will be exactly alike. Now, the movement is nicely made. All the standards of high horology, including satin of the wheels, black polish of the screws, mirrored anglage on the edge of the bridges, and you can really see it lighting up there, like the Vacheron. This is the real thing, not a machined bevel. It also includes real Côte de Genève laid down with abrasive wheel, not with a stamp. Twin mainspring barrels. It's based loosely on the 1185 Frederic Piguet caliber, but highly modified for this application. You get the long power reserve, the Perpetual Calendar, you get the GMT, you get the automatic winding, you get the hand-engraved rotor, and the 42mm platinum case in a 150-piece series. It is substantial, though it's not monstrous. As you can see on my wrist, it's a full-size dress watch, not necessarily an oversized watch objectively, and that 13mm case size means that the lovely double-stepped bezel wears easily underneath the cuff. A truly special piece and an incredible value. Now, if you want to talk a real value, Habring of Volkermarkt, Austria delivers it. This model, launched in 2007, was one of the first new watches to be launched under the eponymous brand of Richard and Maria Habring. Richard Habring, of course, previously working most notably for IWC and Lange, releasing timepieces after his own aesthetic sensibility. And you can see this model was number 01 for the 2011 model year. That is the serial number. They only make a few dozen pieces each year. 42mm in stainless steel. The watch features a dial that includes an optional 45-minute register for the chronograph rather than 30. And as you can see, it features applique indices and bi-Arabic numerals Applique, yes, and loomed. It is a loomed dial, vertically satin finished salmon center with concentric guilloche for the twin registers, and then you can see on the case back a true vintage new old stock movement. This is how the early Habring watches were made, and here we see a real circa 1970 Valjoux 7733. Born in the 1940s as the Venus 188, it became the 7733 in roughly 1966 when Valjoux bought Venus. Later adapted to automatic winding at a 4 Hz beat rate, in the early 70s it became the Valjoux 7750. This being the original 7733, it's a little bit different. Manual wind, you can see it features a lateral clutch, and I'll demonstrate how all this works. Lateral clutch, easy to view, cam operation, as crisp as I've ever felt. Richard Habring must have done something special here because it feels as sharp as a column wheel. Now it beats away at 18,000 vibrations per hour, not the 28.8 of the 7750. It has a 44 to 45 hour power reserve, and as you can see, a very simple satination across the bridge is media blasted, a lovely finish for a simple and strong watch. Throw it on the wrist, it's comfortable, but it is large at 52.2 millimeters lug to lug. If you want an independent brand from a great mark, a great watchmaker, and a brand small enough that you can be on a first name basis with your watchmaker when it goes back for service, this is a truly special watch. It's also simple enough that if you wish, it can be serviced locally by your regular ETA or Rolex guy. A great way to get into independent horology without spending a mint. And back in the 1990s, Roger Dubuis was one of the very first to venture into the world of independent horology, along with Franck Muller, F.P. Journe in the late 90s, Urban Jurgensen, and a handful of others. Dubuis helped to break the mold of group association and strike out with his partner Carlos Diaz to create a brand under his own name. Initially named Sogem, the company was later formally named Roger Dubuis, and this was its most distinctive and famous early model, the Sympathy. 37 millimeters in white gold, the watch features simple and strong lug profiles with a case that appears to be molten metal drawn out and then flash frozen, almost as though it was drawn and then frozen, leaving the points and the fluidity intact. Now, the second generation Sympathy was cheaper to make. It had a circular crystal and a circular bezel. This was a tougher watch to make, a more expensive watch to make, and that's why this form of Gen 1 Sympathy was discontinued. Now, the timepiece is a perpetual calendar, and you can see that lovely shaped case, bezel, crystal, and dial with a lacquered dial that is absolutely beautiful, and a perpetual calendar based on Roger Dubuis' own innovations in the late 80s for Harry Winston. Now, the dial features applique indices and numerals in white gold. Note that it features the phrase Bulletin d'Observatoire up at 12 o'clock. It is a French Besançon observatory chronometer, tested as a fully cased watch with the regular being Mr. Dubuis himself. Now you can see it is also Geneva hallmark. This is the caliber 5739. It's the 57 with the perpetual calendar mechanism. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. You can see it is a Longines L990 or Breguet 8815, extensively modified per Roger Dubuis standards for accuracy as well as beauty. So it bears the Poinçon de Genève, and you can see the RD logo ghosted onto the case back. A truly special watch and one of the best buys. A truly important watch, and I have to mention that these are no longer cheap the way they used to be. They're still a good value, but the market is discovering vintage Roger Dubuis, and at over 20 years old, that certainly describes this timepiece. One of the best loved Dubuis watches, and a lot of folks truly regret that this isn't still what the brand represents. The traditional values of Dubuis: compact, beautiful, detailed, and complicated. Both a chronometer and Geneva hallmark, and very rare. Now, before he struck out on his own, Dubuis worked long-term as a complication specialist at Patek Philippe, and this is a great Patek Philippe complication. The timepiece right here, the 5131G, white gold, 39.5 millimeters with a cloisonné enamel dial inside a world time complication. It is a Calatrava style case with the crown guard profile, giving it the appearance of a larger watch. Now you can see this one features Central Asia, Europe, East Asia, Africa, as well as New Zealand and Australia. It features outboard the 24 principal time zones of the world, just like the JLC earlier, only here the index is up at 12 o'clock rather than 6. So let's say I want to go from Auckland to Los Angeles. The watch does all of the math for me. I'll continue to New York because I'm in Philadelphia, and if I wish to set it separately, I can do so by turning the crown, and you see how the 24-hour reference ring aligns with the individual cities. So you look at the hour adjacent to the city, and then you look at the minute centrally, and you have the time in all 24 principal time zones. The dial is what you're paying for here, as it's cloisonné enamel with different depths of lacquer and color, I should say different depths of enamel, that's vitreous glass-based paint, different depths and different colors used to create the image of the landmass and the seas, and then the cloison, or the gold wires used to create the form of the continents and the land masses. So both cloison, manually applied, and enamel, and fired, and silicone hairspring, and micro rotor automatic, and Patek Philippe seal, and Gyromax. 38 to 48 hour power reserve, immaculately hand finished. The 240 micro rotor has long been Patek's premium automatic movement, one step above the 324 in the pecking order. It gives you the beautiful open vista of a manual, the thin profile of the manual, and of course the convenience of an auto. And this is the signature watch from my favorite independent. Originally launched back in late 2010 and winning the GPHG for 2011, not just the GPHG award, but the GPHG award, the Aiguille d'Or, the Golden Needle or Golden Hand. This was the grand prize winner at the Oscars of watchmaking, and this is the DB28 kind of blue zirconium, featuring fired grade 5 titanium to create the blue, which, by the way, de Bethune can refinish and recoat if you ever scratch it. It features a central case, 42.7 millimeters in nearly scratch-proof zirconium, and a dial that includes blue details in both black polish as well as a matted blue atop Côte de Bethune. You could see a black polished and fully fired blue balance bridge with shock protection on each side as well as Inca block on the center. That is the triple parachute shock protection system. That's patented. Twin self-adjusting barrels with a 6-day power reserve. That's patented. A proprietary titanium and white gold balance. That's patented. A proprietary dog leg kink flat hairspring that beats like an overcoil concentrically in any position without the shock susceptibility and vulnerability of the overcoil. Yes, the hairspring is patented, and so too is the unlubricated silicone escape wheel. How many patents are in this watch? At least 5. And there's a power reserve indicator on the dial side, as well as an elaborate large form power reserve on the reverse side showing you the underlying mechanism with beautiful satination and underneath tons of engine-turned perlage. The watch features variable geometry floating lugs that transition from 53 to 58 millimeters. They can be replaced with short lugs that span 47 to 51 when the watch goes back to the factory, so it's highly tailorable. And the timepiece is less than 12 millimeters thick, so it sits very flush on the wrist. If you look closely, you can see there's yet another patent. What are we up to, 6? For the 300, well, heck, it's a spherical fired blued steel and white palladium moon phase. It has an adjustment interval of once every 1,000 years or so. Yes, that is also patented, along with the process for firing blue titanium. That is patented. This moon phase, which is just using a pusher on the flank, rotates 360 degrees, and again, it's spherical, so it's like a ball at the base of the dial. The watch beats away at 28.8, and it features traditional finish, which means mirrored on glass. You can see it lighting up, black polished screws, and of course, the Côte de Genève, known as Côte de Bethune, with plenty of satination and engine turning. So while the look is Star Trek, the finish is old world. That said, RM doesn't hold back. This is not a traditionally finished watch, and it's not pretending to be. Launched in 2013, this is the RM3901. It is a GMT, a flyback chronograph, an annual calendar, a 55-hour automatic. It's made of titanium, it's 50 millimeters in diameter, and it features a locking crown system so you won't accidentally activate the chronograph, which, as I mentioned, is a flyback. Now, the watch is huge, but as you can see, it is shaped to fit a wrist. They realize, as Hublot does, that you can make a bigger watch, but not a bigger customer. So it actually fits on my wrist, even if, frankly, the style is bombastic. You need the panache to pull this off. I don't have it. You might. The timepiece even includes a circular slide rule, the A6B, originally devised in the 1930s by an American airman. It is a logarithmic scale that can be used to calculate multiplication, division, your airspeed, your ground speed, your fuel consumption. It even includes adjustments for your current altitude as well as air temperature, so you can compensate. As an aviator, you already know what to do with that. For everyone else, it just looks butch. Now, of course, the watch is a flyback chronograph, which is a ton of fun, frankly, but it also includes a UTC, or Universal Standard Time function, that allows you to keep a second time zone in 24-hour format. If you look closely, the watch, which does feature a quick set, includes a double-digit date and a month. That's an annual calendar function. And if you look very closely down at 6 o'clock, there's a 24-hour calibration for the chronograph, so it doesn't feature the standard 12 hours of a regular chrono. It has a 24-hour scale, so you can more easily see how long the chronograph's been running during an extended flight. The dial features incredible depth, an inner carbon fiber reference ring on which the loomed indices are mounted, and then the RMA S2 grade 5 titanium shock absorbing movement, which is exceptional. Mounted on rubber shock absorbers outboard, it features a free sprung balance for further shock absorbing, and then 2 barrels for even torque release from max wind to minimum wind, and a variable inertia. You could see variable geometry and variable inertia rotor, so your Richard Mille watchmaker can set it for maximum winding efficiency or minimum, depending on your level of activity. Finally, to make sure you don't accidentally activate the chrono while flying, there is a lock for the crown. This thing kicks ass. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of any watch you see here.